Hey everybody, this is Patty Sliney, Handy Quilter National Educator, and I had a question come up from one of my students in one of my virtual classes I'm teaching about how to crop away sections of the quilt that extend beyond your throat space, that are areas that are really large. So I wanted to do this little video to show you how to do that. It's not hard, but there are some sort of tricks to it that you want to make sure that you follow so you have a successful outcome. So on my screen, you can see that I have a representation of a quilt, and this is real similar to the quilt that the student was referring to. So the quilt itself, you can see over here, and the area is about 60 by 60. And I went ahead and created a little line drawing using our wonderful Pro Stitcher Record and Mark tool. That's going to represent the quilt top. It's a pieced quilt top, and it's got this big pieced snowflake design motif. And this is what the student wanted to crop out. She wanted to crop out everything that is inside this snowflake, just leaving the all over edge to edge design around the edges. So essentially in the four corners, which I told her would probably be easier if we created an all over edge to edge design that covered the entire quilt, and then we just cropped out this area in the snowflake. So I have created that for you so you can kind of get an idea visually, since we're doing this in simulation. This is just to kind of represent the quilt top for you. I will not be stitching out the snowflake design. That just is kind of a representation of the quilt top, so you can visualize the quilt top and what we're trying to crop. So in this particular circumstance, when you're cropping out so much of the design, the best thing to do is to base the entire quilt top down. So you're down to your take-up bar and your backing bar, and you're off your quilt top bar. So you can just roll the quilt back and forth on those two bars. That will prevent any puckering or gathering as you stitch out just the edges here. So it's going to stabilize your quilt top. So it's one of the few times that I'll ever tell you you need to baste when you're doing an all over edge to edge design, because we're cropping away so much of that edge to edge design. Quilt top's going to lose its stability. So base the whole quilt first, and then go ahead and set everything up. And you can see I have a quilting space set up. I believe this person uses Pro Stitcher Lite, so I wanted to create really what is a frame space in Pro Stitcher Lite, quilting space in Pro Stitcher Premium, to represent the frame space and your safe stitching area in your throat space. So we've got we're going to be cropping away this first throat space section. Now, I want you to look carefully at the design. I purposefully did not snug up these rows. I wanted you to see this little gap between the rows. Just for visual purposes, you might have it snugged up more, but you do need to be very aware of what row is going to be stitching out in your throat space. So for the first pass, we're going to be stitching out this top section here. This section here below this little gap right in here, that's not going to stitch out because that whole row doesn't fit in the throat space. So we would have to advance to get this row to fit into the throat space. And you can see here the height of the safe stitching area is 12 inches. And I think our design is like 9.5 inches tall or something. So basically the things that we're going to be focusing on, and I'm going to zoom in so you can see a little better here. So let me zoom in on this section. We don't need to worry about cropping this part out because we're not stitching it. We're only stitching this row. This row down here won't stitch because, as you can see, about 2/3 of it is below the frame space. So we're going to focus on cropping this area out. Really, that's all that we're going to worry about. This row just happens to sit above. Now, if this row dipped down into here, then yes, we'd want to start here, and we can certainly do that. We could start our area here, our cropping area here, and just kind of go across. And that's what I'm going to do just in case this little segment right here, let's zoom right in on it. Oh boy, it really touches the frame space, bottom edge of the frame space. So let's zoom back in, and I'm going to show you how I'm going to approach this, and I hope it's not perfect. I hope when I crop that I get some weird bobbles so you can see how to undo your cropping area and redo it so you can get a good clean crop. All right, so first thing, you can see I have my general overall quilt top area. We need to get rid of that. So we're going to clear that original area. It's not needed anymore. I'm going to baseline everything here. Not sure what was in baseline. Let me just check my workspace here. I want to make sure this is, yeah, this looks like it was baselined. I'm going to select none and then select my all over edge to edge. Let's just baseline that just so we have clean, fresh design to baseline. Now I'm going to go back and highlight my freehand. I want my edge to edge to be in the background so I can use my outline to, like I was looking at my quilt top, so I have something to crop against. Okay, so first thing we need to get rid of our area. So we're on the area tab. So let's go to area here in the workspace and let's clear our original area. And that allows me to create a cropping area now. So I'm going to turn on my crosshairs and I'm going to move my machine needle on my quilt top. And now I'm looking at my quilt top. And I guess I can probably start about here. And I'm going to put my needle right on that seam line of the snowflake on my quilt top. And I'm going to start placing my multi-point area points. For those of you that have programmable handlebar buttons, you can use those. For those that don't, you'd want to use your multi-point tool here in the tool ribbon. So I'm going to go ahead and when I zoomed in, that little line right here was actually not going to stitch into the snowflake. It was close, real close, but I'm going to make sure I'm below it because I don't want to crop it away. And that's to make the cropping cleaner. There's no reason for me to crop this little teeny edge here, so I'm not going to do it. It just makes it more complicated for Pro Stitcher to calculate the stitching path. So if I don't need to crop it away, let's not do it. So I'm going to put my second point here, and if I zoom in, you can see it's going to be below this edge of this design. So let's zoom back out. Okay, move back over a little bit because I want to see this whole area. And maybe zoom in a wee bit more. Okay. So let's grab my crosshairs again, and we're going to go across, and I'd probably put another point here, another point here, and again, zoom is your friend. You can zoom in and out, and if I feel like I'm just not really accurate, I can zoom in, grab my crosshairs again, go here. Again, I don't want to crop this, don't want to crop this. I want that all to stitch out. This down here, this is the second row. It's not stitching. We're not stitching this. We're only stitching what's up here because this doesn't fit in the throat space. So I'm going to constantly remind you of that. Okay, and so I want to definitely stitch this. This isn't stitching, so ignore it. I don't need to go down in here. This isn't stitching. So I'm going to move my crosshairs to here, but again, I'm moving my needle point to here, but I'm paying attention to this right here. I don't want to crop the edge of this. I want that to stitch out. So I'm going to place my next point here. Now let's zoom out, back, zooming out. Okay, this definitely we have to crop away. This is part of the first row. So this I'm going to be pretty precise about. So I'm going to put my needle right on that seam line, another point, and then I'm going to maybe go a wee bit above, trying to maintain that angle if I can, or I can even just put it right on the seam line, put a multi-point there, I want to capture all the stitches. This is going out into the batting, so it's not gigantically important, but it does help to make sure you're capturing all the stitches you don't want to stitch out. Okay, and then we're going to move back down the seam line here on the block. And let's move over. And I'd probably put one right about here. And then here. And I'm starting to approach the bottom of this line, of stitching line, this row. You can see the bottom is right here, so I'm going to go below it, because I don't want any of this here to stitch out. I definitely want to crop all of that away. And now again, I want to pay attention, because I don't want to crop the edge of this leaf or the edge of this flower petal. Again, if you're not sure, zoom's your friend, zoom in. See, my crosshairs are below the edge of this. So let's place another point. And then grab my crosshairs again, place another point here. Sorry, my mouse is being difficult. Again, I want to make sure I don't capture any of that. Do multi-point. Let's zoom out a little bit. And remember, I've told you all, areas are always closed objects. So I'm just going to drop one more point down here. One more multi-point. Okay. We have a closed area. Let me zoom in for you so you can see it just on the area. Okay. The part that we want to pay attention to, that we want to make sure gets cropped out, is this section right here. Again, anything that is in here, this little sliver of the area, this little sliver of the area, that is on the second row. It's not being stitched out. Okay, so now let me make my edge-to-edge design active, because that's what I want to crop. So if I go to Modify, Crop, and I crop inside, let's see what happens. Okay, well, it worked perfectly. I'm sorry it worked perfectly. I was kind of hoping it wouldn't, that we'd have like maybe a section here cropped out. And if that happens, you can just undo and continue undoing all of your area points, and then just readjust your cropping area points a little bit, and then try and crop again until you get a nice clean crop like this. Now, I'm going to tell you, this is one of the times that you don't want to baseline, and you don't really need to. And we're also not going to close our edges. I don't want to close our edges. We don't need to, because I don't necessarily want to connect these with straight lines. It will be cleaner if you don't. Yes, you have some start and stops. All of these down here, these start and stops, completely immaterial. Why? Because we're not stitching this row out. We're only stitching this row out. So the start and stops are what you see here. A start, a stop, some start and stops here. And yes, they're kind of pain, but if you go to your settings tab and go to your auto jump, you want to set that to 0. That will make Pro Stitcher stop at all the stop points and the start points, so you can pull up your bobbin thread and clip the threads. So it's not going to make an auto jump. So it's going to stop at every single start and stop point. It's going to be cleaner if you do that. So you would go ahead at this point and you would, let me zoom out, you would stitch this first row, and it's all going to stitch out except this part we cropped, and then this little edge that we cropped of the second row, don't worry about it. So once this is all stitched out, you are going to go back to your area and watch what happens, because I didn't baseline. We're not going to need this area anymore, because we're going to create a new area, because we want to crop this whole section in here out. So watch what happens to the all over edge to edge design when I clear the area, because I didn't baseline. Boom, everything comes back. one of the rare times I'll tell you not to baseline. Now we baselined the design to start with, and this should be good. So then once let me see if I can, I'm gonna try to pretend that we have dragged and dropped, and I'm going to try to get this row to fit in our throat space. So for simulation purposes, I'm just going to drag this up like we're dragging and dropping, and I'm fitting the second row within the quilt space, within our frame space or our quilting space. Let me get my crosshairs out of the way. Okay, so you can see now we have our second row. It fits. Here's the top edge of our second row. It's below the frame space or the quilting space. Here's the bottom edge. Now, if you are having a hard time visualizing where your top and bottom edge of your row is, don't worry. You can just reopen a design element, grab it, superimpose it on top of your edge-to-edge design. Zoom in and show you. Because sometimes if you get those rows snugged up, it's hard to see where the top and bottom edge of your next row is. But if you reopen your design element, and if you resize it, then drag it on top of your edge-to-edge design, and you can see, oh yes, I'm good. My top edge of my row is definitely below the frame space or quilting space, so is the bottom edge. Once you've decided that, now you can visualize your row. You say, okay, I see the row. I can see it clearly. I'm good. So just close the selected design. You can see how this design element is selected because it's black. Get rid of it. You don't need it. Okay, so that's just a little hint to be able to visualize better the top and bottom edges of your next row. So now I'm just going to, again, do the same kind of cropping, and again, paying attention to what needs to be cropped. The only thing I'm stitching out is this row. So I definitely want to make sure I crop this section because I want that to stitch out. But this row down here, even though it's within my frame space, we're not stitching it because it doesn't fit in the frame space or the quilting space. So I won't be able to stitch out row 3. I'm only paying attention to row 2. So same. We're going to grab this and we're going to create a new area. I'm going to make sure it's below the bottom edge of that second row. I'm going to multi-point it. And I'm going to be on my seam line of my quilt top and looking at my quilt pattern to make sure I capture everything that needs to be cropped out in the second row. And again, I only need to go down to about here. Okay, that's going to capture, that's already cropping. I must have crop on. So that's how you're going to go through and continue creating your space here. There we go. Being a little funky for me. Sorry about that. So you just continue cropping, creating your new cropping space. Don't worry about what it's doing. I'm freaking Pro Stitcher out, but it will work for you, I promise. Okay, let's see. And I want to get a little bit below this edge right here because I want to create a closed object. Pro Stitcher doesn't like it. If I were to set the point here, I'm going to do it and then set another one. I want to show you what I'm talking about. Do you see how the line crosses? It doesn't like that. Pro Stitcher wants it to be an open object. So I would make sure, don't worry, I know it's showing that it's cropping. It's really not cropping yet. I would want to make sure that I stay below this edge. It's a little bit low. Again, who cares about this? We're not cropping it away. We're only worried about row 2. I'm going to say that over and again. You probably will get the point here. Alrighty, let's put our last point in. And again, I'm making sure the last point is below anything that's running horizontally. Okay, let me zoom out. I have crop on. I must have crop on. So if I go to modify, and then let's select our repeat flowers, it's because I had crop already turned on. See how my inside, if I do no crop and then I crop again, I left crop on. It is an on-off tool, and there are a couple of them I will forget to turn off. That's one of them. The other on-off tool I forget is multi-select down here. But again, the cropping worked perfectly. I'm sorry. I wished it didn't work perfectly. I wish it cropped something weird up here, and then I could show you. You could undo, undo, undo. There we go. See how it's undoing my points? And then you can go back and you can redo them if you want. If you have a weird cropping outcome that crops some of the design you definitely don't want cropped. And I left crop on again. Sorry about that, folks. See, it's on. So if I crop, it cropped perfectly. Again, I'm going to go to Pro Stitcher, Quilt Run. It's going to stitch out just this second row. And then when you're done, you're going to go to Area, Clear Area. Okay, that's not what I meant to clear. Let's undo that. Sorry. That was the quilting space. Clear Area. See, even educators make mistakes. And then we're going to advance, 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 and we're going to get our third row. So it's within our quilting space. And then we're going to crop the next. And of course, forgot my design. This would also, this would also be moving up for you. Remember, that's just a representation of the quilt. So this is my third row. Then we're going to be focused on cropping all of this area out. Don't have to worry about the second row. It's already stitched out. Don't have to worry about the fourth row. We're not stitching it. It's just the third row you're paying attention to. So I hope that helps. It's a little more advanced. I would say this is a good solid intermediate practice exercise, but remember, if you just focus on the row that's within your throat space and you want to create your area to crop just this portion of the third row out of the area you want to crop, then you're going to be good. If you get a weird crop result where it crops something out here or crops a piece out here and you don't like it, just use your undo arrow, undo your area points, reposition them a little bit, and then try crop inside again. So crop inside, don't close the edges, go to settings, set your auto jump to 0, and then when you're creating the areas, focus on cropping just the row you're stitching and make sure that your area stays open and the area lines don't cross each other. So I hope that helps, and give it a try and see how you do.